myself, I want to thank our amazing host, the U.S.-Mexico Foundation, and this glorious facility that has opened their doors for all these amazing discussions. Big kudos to U.S.-Mexico Foundation. I'm getting great reviews on all of the discussions, really first class. So I'm TK Harvey. I'm the Vice President for Culture and Sports for an organization based in Washington, D.C. It goes by the name of Meridian International Center. For 65 years, we've really positioned ourselves at the intersection of U.S. government, diplomatic corps, private sector, leaders in culture and sports through exchange programs, training initiatives, content development, really helping our U.S. government, our diplomatic corps, and private sector underscore the role of diplomacy in economic development and community engagement. As many of us know, North America is soon to approach a mega decade of sports. These athletic events will serve as a catalyst to connect fans, cultures, and economies. The 2026 FIFA World Cup and the 28 Los Angeles Olympics and multiple major league championships will bring unprecedented opportunities, not only for sports diplomacy across the continent, but also for financial growth in businesses and communities on and off the field. At Meridian, about a year ago, we founded the Global Sports Diplomacy Initiative, really aiming to break down silos across major leagues, between governments and private sector. And so we were going to do that through training programs, forums, and exchanges. I encourage you to look more into this, and I'm not going to give bios for all of our amazing speakers. I want to direct you to the app, to the website, to learn more about these incredible individuals. So I'm going to break the conversation into three major pillars. First, we're going to discuss economic growth and investment opportunities, followed by diplomacy and cultural exchange. And of course, lastly, I would love to talk about the long-term legacy and the shared North American benefits of these major sporting events. To get started, I'd like to go to Mr. Reggie Love. Before we get into each answer, of course, introduce yourself and your role in the work that you do. Reggie Love, now with Apollo Global Management. So my question to you, Reggie, is from an investor's perspective, what sectors or innovations present the greatest opportunities as North America heads into this decade of sports?
Well, TK, thank you for that, and thanks for being here. I love being in Mexico City. My second time here to this conference has only gotten bigger and better. As TK mentioned, I'm a senior advisor to Apollo Global Management. We are a large alternative asset management platform based in Washington, D.C. I also sit as a director for a software company called Teamworks that's based in Durham. Teamworks employs about 480 people in the sports space. They sell performance software that does everything from recruiting. They use AI to assess pricing, to look at your performance, to look at all the things that you eat and consume and how it helps you with recovery. They sell this product to 100% of the NFL, 100% of the NBA, 100% of college football, and about 40% of the rest of the world. It's about a $1.5 billion value company that no one's ever heard of. And in terms of as an investor, I invested in this company probably 10 years ago, and a lot of people think that investing has to do with like getting it right. Some of it has to just do with the macro. And I will just level set with you guys. So you've seen a lot of growth in the U.S. For college, but mainly because of like legislative reasons, right? So you've had a couple big rules that came out that really changed the way in which the economics for college athletics were shared. And so that has been the biggest driver for a lot of value creation, because you now have all these different services that are being provided to student athletes, to universities in a way. So a great example is the transfer portal. 20 years ago, you could transfer, but you could only transfer one. Now, if you look at the transfer portal in college today, for each sport, there's probably 7,000 kids in the transfer portal. So what are people doing? They're using technology and AI and services to best assess like that talent pool. And then I'd say probably the bigger piece that's really happening is media and like how people are consuming sports. And so if you look at a lot of the consumption patterns out there, it used to be you were competing with Jeopardy and Family Matters and a bunch of stuff on like linear television. And now if you look at live sports, if you look at the largest viewed events in 2024, basically, except 2 presidential debates and the State of the Union, they were all sporting events. And of that, I think 48% of them were all NFL games. And so, I think that it's a huge shift in consumption, therefore also creating more macro value for all these sports organizations. And so investors are looking at a lot of things. They're looking at software and technology like Teamworks. They're looking at increased valuations. I think today there was something that came out that said that, not today, no. You had the Lakers that just traded for $10 billion. You had the Celtics that traded for $8 billion. And Travis, you worked in the NBA, and you'll know a lot of what has now happened is, institutional investors are now participating in these asset classes, which they were not allowed to. And with these firms like Arctos that are now raising funds in order to be able to be on these cap tables, investors are now able to participate in the growth, in the macro growth that you're seeing around the consumption. And I think lastly, I think time zones. I think we're in a global world today. I'm an investor in the Tiger Woods Rory McIlroy Golf League called TGL. And honestly, the product's not that good. But it's in a really good time spot, So it comes on out of season on a Monday night. They get 1 million viewers because it's not competing with football, And so you look at Formula One. Formula One is kind of locked up Sunday morning before footballs, right? So I think with new consumption patterns, these global markets, I think when and how you deliver content to consumers, you're going to see a lot of different ways to optimize on opportunities.
Great. And Travis, over to you. Founder of Jetter Global, given your experience as a U.S. diplomat and your leadership in international government affairs for the NBA, how can organizations and industries strategically leverage major sporting events to create cross-border economic and cultural opportunities?
Well, thanks, TK, and thank you. It's a pleasure to be here and talk about a topic that's near and dear to my heart, this idea of sports diplomacy. As TK mentioned, I'm a former diplomat. I started my career on Capitol Hill and then worked at the NBA and international government affairs for a number of years, and then started Jetter Global back in 2022, recognizing a variety of things. One, you have every domestic American sports league that's seeking to expand its international footprint. At the same time, you have this spate of international sporting events coming into the United States over the next decade. A lot of people talk about World Cup Olympics. That kind of is the pattern of people mention the World Cup in 26 and the Olympics in 28. But what they don't realize is that the United States has actually not hosted a major sporting event since 2002. So in a time in which sporting events have become not just major economic drivers, but truly engaging the world. The World Cup final in 2022 between Argentina and France, almost a quarter of the world's population watched some point of that final game. So there's just a massive opportunity now for the United States, and frankly, we're not ready, I think, is the underlying thesis that I see. One, tremendous opportunity. Two, we're not ready to capitalize on that opportunity. So here we are 22, 23 years later since the last major sporting event, and we're hosting the World Cup next year. In 2027 is the World Military Games in North Carolina. 2028 is the Olympics. 29, the World University Games. 30 so far is an off year, and then 31 would be the Women's FIFA World Cup in the United States and Mexico, hopefully. And then also that year would be the Men's Rugby World Cup in the United States, and then the Women's Rugby World Cups in 33, and then the Winter Olympics in 34. So it's event after event after event, and in advance of each of those are going to be dozens of international competitions, world championships, international sporting events. And so there's a real opportunity here, is what I keep hammering on, for us as a country and as a continent to utilize these events and as a springboard to greater opportunity. And to your question, TK, when I was a diplomat, we spent a lot of time talking about good governance, rule of law, respect for democracy, free and fair elections, and frankly, we don't have those talking points quite as solidly as we did a decade ago. And so as we look to the tools that allow us to engage, to influence, to inform the world, sports really is. If you're talking about 25% of the world's population in 1 2-hour block engaging in one event, in an environment that's never been more fractured, there's such a tremendous opportunity here for reach. And there's a lot of different directions we can go with the conversation today in terms of youth engagement, of technology, as Reggie touched on, and obviously sports performance and aspects of athletics itself. But I think that with the World Cup in particular, we have the US, Mexico, and Canada that are co-hosting 104 matches spread across 16 cities. But what I'm not seeing is the development of essentially this cross-border cooperation on those elements that go beyond the pitch, right? Talking about trade missions going back and forth, talking about this idea of this economic innovation that is possible around this, joint showcases that feature technology, innovation, like I said, the sports performance. I think there's a lot that we could do there because at the end of the day, sports events are a convener, right? They bring people together, and through that, we can use those events to have these larger conversations. And so in the United States, we really need to be looking at sports as a policy tool in the same way that we look at energy and trade and climate initiatives and technology. And we don't look at that in the same way. We kind of see it as a nice to have. And I think one of the biggest things working against this idea is this concept of soft power, right? What is soft about sports? You talk to Asia Wilson, you talk to any professional footballer here, men or women in Mexico, in the United States, any professional athlete, any Olympian, anybody playing in the World Cup. There's nothing soft about it. So I think we have to kind of shift the narrative and the nomenclature we use around this idea of sports as a policy tool, but as a way to bring industries and entities together to have higher level conversations.
Yeah, incredible. Jürgen, we'll move over to you now as Chief Tournament Officer for FIFA here in Mexico. Maybe the coolest title that I've heard in a long while. Coordinating an event that spans over 3 continents involves countless moving parts, from transportation and hospitality, fan safety, and community engagement. What does effective operational collaboration look like on that mass level? And what are some of the biggest challenges, some of the things that are kind of keeping you up at night, and for something like this to actually work? What are some of the challenges you're facing?
Thank you very much, TK, and it's a pleasure being here with everyone today. Randy will talk afterwards. I'm an investor in the NIL space, so I'm curious to see what your take is on that. Not yet. I'm invested with a company called No Cap Sports. And, look, putting together the biggest sporting event the world has ever seen comes with a lot of challenges, but also a lot of responsibility. The smallest one being that it has never been done before. There is no guide to get you from A to C to do it the right way. And then you put the complexity of 3 countries, 3 different cultures completely, 3 government systems, a geopolitical situation that changes by the minute, and then you add 16 host cities that could not be more different one from each other. I mean, I'm just going to focus on Mexico, Guadalajara, Monterrey, and Ciudad de Mexico. But take us over to the other side of the border, Kansas City from Miami to New York to Seattle. I mean, those are 4 different countries on their own. So putting this all together from an organizer point of view, and having the eyeballs of the world watching us. I'm going to add to the stat that you kindly mentioned. The last World Cup final had over 1.5 billion television viewers. And we're talking about TV in a landscape where media consumption is shifting, as Randy was saying, correct? Now it's not about only TV, it's how do you consume the sports in different platforms. This is the largest single sporting event. Our biggest challenge is to try to integrate the operations, start to put together protocols that can be implemented, first and foremost, across each one of the cities, and then, into the 3 countries, with some of them that are going to be successful. Some of them are not. I mean, the whole visa situation, I doubt that we're going to be able to have a higher card like we had in 2022 to have this. That's not realistic. And we are 36 weeks away from the ball rolling. At some point in time, from an organizer point of view, the strategy needs to stop and we need to start implementing the operation. So what keeps me up at night? All of that, in addition to 74 different functional areas that bring this World Cup together. I mean, on any given day, we're talking, we have a staff here in Mexico that is close to 95 people that on any given day are looking from the field of play, literally the type of grass that's being sawed right after in Estadio Azteca here across the street, where the first opening match of the World Cup will be played in the only country that will host 3 World Cups in a row with 3 opening matches, all the way to safety and security, to administrative sides and workforce. So all of that combination is a big challenge. Now, the key to this is that we have great stakeholders. In Mexico, the relationship with the federal government and Gabriela Cuevas, since she came on board, we've been a fantastic team together. Why? Because we have the same goal in common: to deliver the best World Cup for FIFA, but also raising the profile of who Mexico is in the eyes of the world. Look, in North America, we have a competition in between the 3 countries. Our countries, the 3 of them, Canada, Mexico, and the US, are great at organizing events. In the US, Super Bowls come and go, NCAA's events, I mean, the best of the best. In Mexico, for us, the challenge is to showcase that we're at that same operational expertise and operational excellence. And that is the challenge that moves our office forward. When you have all those challenges in a box and you're facing the biggest sporting event in 36 weeks, we are excited about it. We are starting to be more, feet on the ground about what we want to do and focus on what we can deliver. But so far, it's going well, TK.
Yeah.
Can't wait.
Well, while I do envy your title, I do not envy your workload, sir. So good luck to you. 36 weeks just made my heart flutter a little bit, so appreciate that. Phil, we'll kick it over to you with the World Business of Chicago. How can host cities leverage major sporting events such as the World Cup and LA 28 as a launch pad, while also balancing the environmental impact and sustainability challenges these events often bring?
Okay, so I'm Phil Clement, CEO of World Business Chicago, and I think my most immediate duty is to point out that because I have the word Chicago in my title, I have the coolest job title.
That's true.
And so I'm a part of the economic development team. I work for the mayor of Chicago and with my colleagues to grow the economy in Chicago. When I say the word Chicago, I think you probably immediately somewhere in your brain go to Michael Jordan. I think these are the things that point to why sport is so important. I really enjoyed Travis's comments, and TK, I've got to dig into your website. Sport is always underestimated. Sport is completely serious business. When I was a CMO at a company called Aon Corporation, I made a decision that at the time was the most expensive decision a company had ever made to sponsor a sports team. And it was Manchester United, and we put the logo. And as soon as I made the decision, executive recruiters started calling me saying, hey, you're going to be fired soon, so you better get your resume on the street. And just the opposite happened. The value of the sponsorship. We were a company of relative obscurity. We were not known globally. Only 8% of the company went to market as Aon Corporation. The rest of it were former acquisitions. I bring this out just because the power of a sport association is something companies pay good money to have, and now cities just get it because they're the host and amplify and grab it. I think there's a caution, like, oh, should I bet so much on a sporting event? I'm just going to say, yes, run to this, take full advantage of it, amplify the values of your community. And then, you also mentioned more subtle issues. So there's obviously branding and things about excellence, et cetera. But something like sustainability, anything that you're trying to tackle, people will rally around. Sustainability has so many great stories in sport right now. If you look at even how stadiums are matching platinum lead status, et cetera. I've spent a lot of time working on those, and people are absolutely fascinated by those issues. But on one occasion, I just brought together in Chicago at Wrigley Field, go Cubs! Right now we're nearly in the World Series. We brought together business leaders and we started talking about different sustainability issues in Chicago. And someone just mentioned, why aren't the cups recyclable here? And the problem solving amongst business leaders turned out we didn't have an industrial dishwasher. Various restaurant groups would be happy to sponsor. Anyway, long story short, within 6 months, we now have the facility in our city to do it because there was capital in the room. There were people who were deeply committed to sustainability, and sport gives you that opportunity to convene and be a business. So I guess the main thing would be don't pause. Run and take full advantage of the power of sport for your city and for whatever cause you're working on.
Yeah, I think we can all agree that sports is not a nice to have. It's really a must have, at least for me and my own family. It's what we do as a pastime. And the sustainability piece, I think France did an excellent job when they hosted.
Absolutely.
And so they've really set the bar, and I'm sure LA is set to follow.
Yep.
Shifting gears to Gabriela. With the government of Mexico, would love to hear your perspective, drawing on your experience as a legislator and international diplomat. How is Mexico leveraging the World Cup to advance government initiatives that promote cultural diplomacy, economic development, and stronger international partnerships more broadly?
Thank you, TK. And actually, thank you all for this invitation and for being part of this, I think, a very important topic that is going to gain more and more importance over the time for very long 36 weeks. So I am the person in charge from the federal government to organize the World Cup, Jürgen's counterpart. And I must say that for us, this is a huge opportunity in terms that Mexico, of course, is going to be the first country and the only one that is going to host 3 football World Cups. So that's amazing for us because we have football in our DNA all the time. But at the same time, it represents a huge platform for Mexico to be seen all over the world. We know FIFA numbers, so statistics are amazing. But this is precisely the moment that perhaps we need to show the world how Mexico is living its transformation. Of course, we are very clear that we have only 3 host cities. I mean, there's this first pillar of our work, which is how are we working with FIFA, these 13 matches, the inaugural game. Also, we are trying to increase its presence in different parts of the country in terms, for example, of the training camps and facilities, some other events with the sponsors, but that's not enough for a country like Mexico, with 133 million population, with a huge passion for football, and with 32 states that would really like to experience what we can live in a stadium. So that brings us to the second pillar, which is a very strong mandate from our president. Our president is very concerned, but she's also this kind of powerful, encouraged woman that takes full ownership of what she wants to be done. So what we're planning is a more comprehensive, more inclusive, and I must say more democratic World Cup. The idea is how are we bringing football to all neighborhoods, to all parts of the country. So that brings us to different aspects that are putting literally all the federal government together at the same table. And that also goes with FIFA in terms of facilitating a lot of processes. So it is not like choosing between pillars, but it is part of, perhaps part of the sports spirit, no? How to understand your team and to share your goals. So we are having a very important perspective in terms of how the World Cup is going to benefit all different regions in terms of economic growth, I mean, yes, we're going to receive a lot of tourism. Some, I think, conservative numbers are around 5.5 million people visiting Mexico only for the World Cup. But we believe that these numbers are too conservative and we are expecting even more. So that is one part of the benefits of having the World Cup. But the idea is, how are we linking the host cities with the neighboring states? And also developing new experiences in terms of tourism, in terms of culture, in terms of arts, in terms even for food, because coming to Mexico is always also about food and good service. So that's part of what we are doing with the host cities and the neighboring states. But there's other part that we are profoundly proud of our culture, our roots, and that's part of what we would like to show to the world. So we are developing a cultural program that is going to be fantastic. I cannot say more, but it's going to be fantastic. Yes, that's the challenging part of this job. If you are coordinating a lot of people, you cannot have any benefit for other people's work. So I cannot say more, but it's going to be fantastic. So with each ministry, each secretary, we are working, developing new activities for children, for youth, for the elderly, for all the country. And that is also giving us, I think, a very powerful narrative in terms of how are we building through sports a new understanding between all North America. Yes, the geopolitical concerns are changing literally every single minute, but there is much more in North America than borders. And it is about people, and it's about how people understand a different reality at the border that perhaps the capital cities are not getting enough, no? So I think that this World Cup is part of that culture. It's a common thread. So in general, we have these two pillars. We are hoping to give more news to come, I think, next week, Jürgen, no? So I won't say more, so I will keep you with some curiosity for the upcoming weeks, because there's a lot to do to make football available for all. And it's about the private sector, and it's about international organizations and social organizations. So there's a lot to do. And if there are people here in the room or a lot of companies, you can join and be part of this huge event that, of course, is going to be the biggest World Cup, but we expect to be and to have the best World Cup ever.
And it will. And I'm really encouraged by your remarks and using the games to engage your own communities, to engage your own populations, bringing everybody together around that. Really incredible. Reggie, over to you. As someone who's competed at a high level, how do you see major events like the World Cup and Olympics driving not only personal growth for athletes, but also economic and cultural impact globally?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think someone referenced it earlier. So I played in college. I played at Duke. We have the NCAA tournament every year. It generates about, I think it generates about $1.2 billion of economic opportunity, which that money is then used to help support non-revenue sports across the entire NCAA. And I think too, if you look at what's special about the U.S. is, we're one of the few countries that doesn't have like a true Ministry of Sport. So, I think in the last Paris Olympics, I think the stats were like 1,200 former or current NCAA athletes were competing in the Summer Olympic Games. And so it's like a great opportunity for all these people who come from all over the U.S. and, from Nebraska to Wisconsin to North Carolina to Duke, to see and to cheer and to root for folks who you have now built a bond with. And Travis, you're right. We haven't hosted an event since 2002, and I remember because I was lucky enough to work for President Obama as a special assistant in personal aid for 8 years. And on one of those days, we got to fly to Copenhagen to bid to support the bid for Chicago to get the Olympics, which we did not win, which was everyone was sad about. I've never been on a plane with so many sad people for 9 hours. And but look, I think the opportunity for not only the people who are competing and the athletes, but the communities that are around it and touching the games, World Cup, NCAA, Olympics, it's like nothing else. Sports is one of those things that brings us all together. It breaks down all the walls, all the barriers. Because when you see people and they're wearing Duke, or they're wearing Mexico, or they're wearing USA, you see them as your community and as your compadre. And so there are people out there who you may have never met in person that you have deep ties to because they are competing or rooting for the same thing that you get this immense amount of joy from. And I remember one of the things that I go back to, so, in the U.S., when you have a presidential election, you have these things called like primary states. And so you go back to 2007, the first state in the U.S. that has an election is the state of Iowa. And if you know anything about Iowa, Iowa is not like the most diverse place in the world. And Barack Hussein Obama was sort of trumping around Iowa, trying to drum up votes. And one of the things that he used to do every day, which I always admired, we'd be in some small town of Amana or, Council Bluffs, and he would go pick up the local paper, and he would look and he'd say, this high school, the Rams played the Buffaloes and they won. And, he'd see somebody and he'd talk about how he read in the paper that this local high school team, and it'd be some little lady, I'm like, my grandson played for that team, or he's on that team. And you'd have this like point where there's a person you don't know and you bring a point of reference and you immediately have connectivity that you can't replace or buy. So yeah.
No, it's incredible. And you do see folks with the same jerseys on and you bond, but unless, I guess in your case, Reggie, unless they have a University of North Carolina jersey on, there could be an issue there with your Duke alumni status. But no, thank you for that. Let's see, Phil, cut over to you. How can cities balance showcasing local culture and positioning themselves as global business hubs during these events?
Sure. And I'll first of all, condolences on, and it was such a good effort, and one that's still in everybody's heart. But one thing, when talking about the Olympics and the Olympic bid in Chicago originally, and then I was moving to London at the time, someone explained to me the Olympic cycle that everybody that works on the Olympics goes through and the population goes through, which starts with elation and dives to despair just before the event. And most people saying things like, oh, I'm gonna rent my house, the traffic's gonna be terrible, et cetera. And then immediately, somewhere around 12 to 24 hours in advance, they start to go, oh, I'm gonna miss it, I gotta make plans, I wish I'd planned more. And then elation afterwards, and just kind of a strong sense of victory. And I see this in Chicago, with Lollapalooza, NASCAR, et cetera. And we just fully embrace it. We know that the outcome, I think one of my panelists said North America does events really well. Chicago does big events really well. We know that everyone's going to be happy and really into it. And I think you got to embrace it as a chance to completely reposition your city. I think we have a chance to reposition North America. There's something, sport, if you go into the brain science of it, there's kind of short thinking and long thinking when you're really thinking rationally about something versus you just going with an assumption. To reposition a product, a city, an idea, you need an emotional experience. And this is why companies invest in sport and in branding. And it puts it in a different part of the file cabinet. So you can take full advantage of the emotion of sport to reposition your culture, your arts, your business community. And it really doesn't take more than one major global instance to change the trajectory of a city. So, culturally, I never underestimate the impact of tourism. Tourism amongst the just pure economic factors, that means young kids showing up for jobs. Make sure that those kids learn something about the legacy of the event, what teamwork means, what it means to be excellent, what it means when a community comes together. It just all ends up working together with vibrancy in the arts and restaurants And it is just a moment to fully capture, amplify, and then redistribute. From a business perspective, you're going to have people coming in from all over the world. People will travel you may not be a host city, you may be near a host city, or actually, we know lots of folks are planning on coming to Chicago on their way. And so I think if you plan conferences, events, Travis, you gave a good inventory of things that people can do, showcases, demonstrations. All of them are going to be more successful than you might imagine. It's just, there's a magical piece. And we can't forget that the Olympics and soccer, football, are the two most universal things in the world. People all over the world can relate to them. As they say, the ball is round when it comes to football. And this is not hockey or rugby, which appeals to just one part of the globe. We got the two biggest global forces coming to North America right now to take full advantage of. So
pretty exciting.
Yeah.
So we're going to shift gears to more on the long-term legacy and the shared North American benefits here, starting with Jürgen. The 2026 World Cup is being branded as a North American event, as it should. Yet the North American region is much bigger than Canada, the United States, and Mexico. How can organizers ensure that the benefits and visibility of this moment extend beyond the host nations, including Central America and the Caribbean, to truly reflect the North America experience?
Absolutely. Thank you, TK. Look, I think the true legacy is about capacity building, and capacity building across the actual governance of football in this region. You got FIFA and you got the Confederation, CONCACAF. And CONCACAF has the luxury of actually accessing 41 of those nations, including Central America and the Caribbean. So from a governance point of view, we have already the channels to be able to reach and contact our counterparts in these different regions. And why do I say capacity building? Because right now, this tri-country process is already teaching us and showing us how to do things differently across the three different countries. And I'm going to use a very specific example. In the US, I believe the governments, local governments, have a very established process by which they're able to bid for major sporting events. You either have the Sports Commission or the Convention and Visitors Bureau or organizations like yours, funded by the government, that have it cleared. You got a roadmap, you got a playbook, how you go out there into the market and try to get that going. In Mexico, with our three host cities, we didn't have that. This was the first time that we're putting things together. And in a country where perhaps the legislation is not as favorable in certain cases as in the US. And I'm going to give deeper the example. What is very common in the United States is a donor program to support, big events. You start with your board, you got the top 5 of each one of the major sporting clubs or franchises in the city sitting there at the table. There's already $3 million by each one of those people there to bid for the Olympics. In your case, by the way, I was in a plane back from South Africa in 2010 when we lost the bid to Qatar for the World Cup. That was with President Clinton, and that was sad too. But that model did not exist in Mexico. And when we first started to look at how to put that in place, I can tell you 12, 13 months later, Guadalajara in Mexico is for the first time putting into motion a very successful donor program that already raised north of $6 million in donations for the World Cup, with assets that are super, small when it comes to comparison to what a sponsor can do. So this capacity building is something that, as we're writing the playbook for this World Cup, through football and through the local governments can be shared. Back in my days in Miami as the chief business officer for Inter Miami the first 3 years, I remember having the conversations with the Miami Heat. They were going in preseason to Bermuda. Why preseason? Why don't we do capacity building to Bermuda so that they bring an official game there, correct? I mean, most of the American leagues are trying to go international. If there is a legacy that could come out of this operational process and governance and government relation, that could be one. And if we can actually, by the way, this started in this meeting, an hour before when you and I were talking, as the idea of how this playbook can actually leave a long and lasting legacy. And we're talking to CONCACAF about it. This is a good idea because it's not only about the infrastructure for the game itself, is the understanding on how to pitch and hopefully win, a bid for major sporting events. And that does not exist in our region.
You need to call the Indiana Sports Corporation. They're the best in the U.S.
That's right. Gabriela, over to you. Would love to hear your perspective on how governments can ensure that the benefits of these games can extend far beyond the actual performance themselves, from economic and cultural ties.
For us, and part of the mandate that was instructed by our president, is that we need to place people at the center of all decisions. And that includes, of course, communities. Because if we think on the real impact of these 13 matches, 3 host cities, in the largest and perhaps more powerful in terms of economic growth, like Mexico City, Guadalajara, Monterrey, we need to expand those benefits. And that goes not only to other states, of course, we expect a celebration for the 32 states, but also for different populations. I mean, this has to be a celebration also for all the Mexican products, which are very important in terms not only for handicrafts or the kind of things that we can see at the small towns, but also in terms of empowering our magical towns, we say, like our most important colonial cities and beaches, and everywhere we have museums. In Mexico, if you turn your eyes, you're going to see something wonderful. So the country is full of beautiful places and lovely people. So that's what we want to show to the world, and this is an amazing platform. But at the same time, we want to keep our legacy in terms of well-being, in terms of how are we changing people's lives. And that goes from one example, I think a very clear one, in terms of health, and this affects Mexico and also the US. In Mexico, 17% of the population has diabetes. So this has to be an opportunity to understand about health, but also as a personal responsibility, as how can we get more active, more responsible of taking care of ourselves. This goes also to our communities. How are we going to eat better or to take care for our women and girls? And we are touching every single space of our federal, states, and community level. We are working at the federal government with like issue-based cabinet, with the idea of having everything like very well organized and with very clear goals and objectives that we can only not measure during the World Cup, but after that, it's the best legacy that we can give is to improve people's lives. And yes, it is going to be about tourism, but it is also going to be about all this campaign of Made in Mexico, Hecho en Mexico, and of course, many, many things to come. I already spoke about the cultural program, but there's going to be a lot to do in Mexico. What we would like to give to the world is some kind of renewed sense of, first, you're welcome in Mexico. Second, you will never get enough of Mexico. I mean, if you are visiting us perhaps for this second time, you can get new and new experiences. And third, we would like to have each visitor as an ambassador from Mexico to go back to their country and to say, you have to come to Mexico. So that's part of what is inspiring us. But again, at the end, this is part of how are we going to impact and to improve people's life. And I believe at the end, that's part of the spirit of sports.
Incredible. It really is a long-term impact. People come here, they appreciate the culture, they want to learn more, they come back. It's really phenomenal. Travis, I think we have time for one more. In short, I'm wondering if you could share more on what cross-border policy opportunities do you see emerging from North America hosting these events collectively?
Well, I think we have a lot to learn from Mexico. Based on what Jürgen and Gabriela have outlined here, there's really two components. We've talked a lot about the World Cup, obviously coming up in 36 weeks. But there's operationalization, and then there's maximizing the opportunity that stands before us. And I think in the United States, we're probably focused pretty heavily on operationalization, just making it a success, making sure everything happens from a transportation security standpoint. With my company, with Jetter Global, we work specifically in sports and immigration, and I do have a lot of concerns about what we will be able to accomplish, or maybe what we're willing to accomplish. What you've outlined in terms of maximizing the opportunity, though, and taking those elements that are so intrinsic in sports, health and wellness, respect for diversity, leadership, teamwork, like those are the elements that make that emotional connection, right? That and team loyalty. And so, I think that from the United States perspective, I'd love to see us, right now we have a World Cup task force that's focused on the operationalization. And I'd like to see us take a step back, learn from our counterparts in Canada and Mexico. And as Reggie said, maybe look at opportunities for not necessarily creating a ministry of sport, but some sort of federal level body that can work to coordinate around these events, not a singular event, but the larger landscape of sports, and look for ways to tie in. Like we have the President's Council on Health and Fitness. And so to Gabriela's point, kind of incorporating policies and regulations through these events that allows us to be a healthier, more robust and active population. We're using a lot the term commercial sports diplomacy. So again, getting away from that soft power term and focusing more on the commercial aspects of sports diplomacy. So how do we use sports to result in revenue generating outcomes? And I think a federal level coordinating body that's looking at not just the World Cup, but all of those events and then the larger landscape in the United States would be tremendously valuable. And then once we get our own house in order, I think it goes to what Jürgen was saying in terms of that capacity building. Then we can export that, because there's one thing that, the United States, we have the resources to bear. We have the ability to really lean into this space and make it impactful for generations to come, and then to export that around the world. So I'm hopeful that we do that and see the opportunities that lie before us.
Yeah, while there are many changes ahead of us, there's certainly more opportunities than challenges. And I feel good knowing that we have experts like this who are leading the efforts. And I just want to finally thank our host, the U.S.-Mexico Foundation, and let's give a warm applause for our expert speakers.